The air, thick with the scent of lilies and unspoken expectations, hung heavy over the opulent ballroom. Every detail of the Los Angeles Medical Center wedding venue screamed perfection, from the glittering crystal chandeliers to the hushed murmurs of the 200 impeccably dressed guests. This was a day meticulously crafted, a fairy tale brought to life, destined to be immortalized in glossy photos and cherished memories. But what if, beneath that shimmering surface, a venomous secret was about to unravel, not just ruining a wedding, but forever shattering a life built on deceit? What if you knew, right then, that in mere moments, an entire meticulously crafted illusion would spectacularly detonate, leaving a trail of scandal that would reverberate for years, exposing a cruelty so profound it would make your stomach churn? You wouldn't dare look away, because this wasn't just a celebration of love, it was the precipice of a seismic shift, an inevitable collision of truth and artifice, and the moment was utterly inescapable. The drama was about to unfold, raw and unfiltered, for everyone to witness, forever branding this day not with joy, but with the indelible mark of a devastating revelation. A ceremony tarnished. The grand celebration paused, every eye in the opulent ballroom snapping toward the bride, Anne, who had just delivered a piercing, disdainful shriek. Her $15,000 designer gown rustled with a violent swish as she lunged forward, her finger jabbing accusingly toward me, seated in my wheelchair. "Is this drooling thing really your father?" she demanded, her voice dripping with utter contempt, amplified by the stunned quiet that had fallen over the room. "Get him out of my sight." The words, sharp and venomous, hung in the air like a lethal gas, and nay, invisible poison that slowly began to suffocate the joy from the gathering. 200 pairs of eyes, startled and uncomfortable, fixated on me, then flickered to my son Will, who stood mortified, his face a mask of disbelief and profound embarrassment, caught agonizingly between the woman he had just married and the father he cherished. Beside me, the oxygen tank, an expertly crafted prop, emitted a soft, almost mournful hiss, a quiet counterpoint to the bride's explosive cruelty. Yet, despite the public humiliation, the collective gasp, the weight of every judgmental stare, I remained impassive. I did not flinch, did not beg for mercy, did not offer a single word of defense. I simply sat there, a seemingly broken old man in a wheelchair, allowing her cruel pronouncement to settle, to fester, knowing that the perfect, devastating truth was just moments away from shattering her carefully constructed world. Here's what that beautiful, hateful bride didn't know, couldn't possibly fathom in her self-absorbed rage. The frail, trembling man she so casually dismissed as a vegetable was in fact worth a staggering $53 million. The wheelchair, an expensive medical-grade prop, was entirely fake. The oxygen tank, a convincing piece of theater equipment, served only to complete the illusion. Even my trembling hands, my slurred speech, and the heartbreakingly realistic glycerin drool were the culmination of $200,000 worth of Hollywood special effects, meticulously designed to deceive. My name isn't Denzel Washington, the broken widower, but Denzel Washington, a retired effects artist of considerable renown, and I had been testing Anne's character for months with this elaborate charade. She was failing spectacularly, not just in small ways, but with a grandeur of callousness that frankly surpassed my darkest expectations. What was about to happen next, on what she believed to be her perfect wedding day, would make her entire world crumble like a house of cards in a sudden violent gust of wind. But before we arrive at that cathartic detonation, let me rewind and explain how we arrived at this profoundly dramatic moment. The seeds of deception. The story truly began 6 months prior when my son Will announced his engagement. My initial reaction was one of genuine happiness, a warmth blooming in my chest. My boy, my only son, had found love, and that was all any father truly wanted. His fiancée was Anne Hathaway, a healthcare administrator working in the exclusive circles of Beverly Hills. On paper, she was everything a father could desire for his son. Intelligent, successful, undeniably beautiful. She possessed an outward charm and professional polish that suggested impeccable breeding and character. Everything seemed perfect, except for one small, deeply significant problem that would unravel everything. She firmly believed I was utterly broke. My simple existence was a deliberate choice, a cloak I had woven around myself after the devastating loss of my wife 3 years ago. Grief, in its insidious way, can sometimes strip away the desire for ostentation for the trappings of a successful life. I had retreated into a studio apartment in Venice, drove a decade-old Honda Civic, and dressed in clothes purchased from Walmart. I had deliberately stopped talking about my illustrious career in Hollywood special effects, my groundbreaking patents, or my shrewd investments. My son, Will, knew I had worked in special effects. It was a common family anecdote, a point of quiet pride. However, he had absolutely no idea about the true extent of my wealth. The $53 million fortune wasn't inherited from some distant relative, but the direct result of selling my special effects company to Disney in 2019. It included patents for breakthrough prosthetic technology, along with substantial royalties that continued to roll in like clockwork every single month. I had kept it all quiet, a carefully guarded secret. My motive wasn't malice, but a deeply personal experiment. I wanted to see who people truly were when they believed I had nothing, when there was nothing to gain from my company or my presence. Anne, tragically for her, failed that test almost immediately. Unveiling true character. Our very first dinner together, a supposed celebratory occasion, was held at some ridiculously trendy, overpriced establishment in West Hollywood. From the moment we sat down, Anne's attention was fragmented, her gaze constantly drifting to her phone, checking messages and updates with an almost compulsive urgency. She barely made eye contact with me, treating me more like a placeholder than a prospective father-in-law. When the waiter, a suave young man, politely inquired about our wine selection, Anne waved a dismissive hand, a faint sneer gracing her lips. "Whatever's cheapest," she declared, her voice carrying a patronizing tone. "We're paying for Denzel, too, after all." Will, seated beside her, visibly winced, his face flushing with embarrassment, but I said nothing, maintaining my simple, unassuming demeanor. I was merely observing, taking mental notes. Later, as dessert was served, Anne leaned forward, adopting a facade of intense, almost saccharine concern. Her smile was practiced, entirely devoid of genuine warmth. "So, Denzel," she began, her voice carefully modulated, "Will says you're between jobs. Have you considered senior services? There are programs for people in your situation." My situation. The phrase hung in the air, implying I was some charity case, an impending burden. I managed a quiet, "I'm managing fine," the words intentionally understated. But Anne, relentless in her condescension, pressed on. "Well, we want to help," she insisted, her voice now dripping with a syrupy sweetness that only thinly veiled her true intent. "Maybe we could find you a nice assisted living place. Nothing too fancy, of course, but clean, safe, somewhere you'd be cared for." I watched her carefully, my internal alarm bells ringing. This woman wasn't just concerned, she was plotting. She wanted to warehouse me, to shunt me aside into some anonymous facility before I even had the chance to become a real problem in her pristine, carefully curated life. This troubling pattern, a subtle erosion of respect and empathy, continued for months, each interaction a new layer of evidence against her. At Will's birthday party, an event meant for joy and family, Anne deliberately seated me at the kids' table, a subtle but deeply insulting gesture. "More appropriate for your level," she whispered conspiratorially, a cruel glint in her eyes, ensuring her dismissive comment went unnoticed by others. Later, when Will and Anne went house hunting for their future together, she made it explicitly clear, with thinly veiled excuses, that I would not be a welcome presence in their new home. "It's really a place for young professionals," she explained with a dismissive wave of her hand. "You just feel out of place." At their opulent engagement party, she introduced me to her parents, Mariel and Brad, with a carefully crafted narrative designed to elicit pity rather than respect. "This is Will's father," she announced, her voice tinged with a performative sadness. "He's struggling since his wife passed. We're just keeping an eye on him." Her mother, Mariel, responded with a look of genuine, albeit misguided pity, while her father, Brad, barely acknowledged my existence, his gaze already moving on. Each encounter chipped away at my hope for Anne, reinforcing the harsh truth. She judged people based on superficial appearances and perceived financial status, and in her estimation, I was severely lacking. The ultimate test. The real conclusive test of Anne's character, however, began in earnest when she started planning the wedding. One afternoon, I arrived at Will and Anne's apartment to drop off a birthday card, but paused outside their door, hearing their voices within. "We need to discuss your father," I heard Anne declare, her voice edged with frustration. Will, ever patient, responded with a simple, "What about him?" The reply was immediate, sharp, and laced with shame. "He's going to embarrass us. Look at him, those old clothes, that beaten-down look. My family will think we're poor. Will. Dad's had a rough time since Mom died," Will interjected, attempting to defend me. "That's exactly my point," Anne countered, her voice rising. "He looks like he belongs in a nursing home, not at our wedding. Can't you clean him up, buy him a decent suit?" It was at this moment I decided to make my presence known. I knocked. The conversation, predictably, stopped abruptly. Will opened the door, flustered, his surprise evident. "Dad, I didn't know you were coming by." Anne appeared behind him, her smile a brittle plastic mask. "Denzel, how nice," she chirped, her eyes betraying her irritation. "We were just talking about the wedding." "I heard," I said calmly, letting the words hang in the air, watching her reaction. Her cheeks visibly reddened, a telltale sign of her discomfort, but she offered no apology. Instead, she doubled down, seizing the opportunity to press her point. "Well, since you're here, we should discuss logistics. The venue is quite upscale. There's a dress code, you know." With a flourish, she handed me a brochure for Men's Warehouse, a thinly veiled insult. "Nothing too expensive," she added, her voice laced with mock concern. "We don't want you to strain your budget." That conversation, that condescending gesture, was the definitive turning point. It solidified my decision. I was going to push her, not gently, but thoroughly, relentlessly, until she revealed her true colors in front of everyone who mattered to her. If she could treat a grieving widower with such contempt and disregard when she merely thought he was poor, what depths of cruelty would she plumb when she genuinely believed he was utterly helpless, completely dependent, and profoundly disabled? This would be the ultimate test. An elaborate, expensive, and deeply personal charade designed to expose the true character of the woman my son was about to marry. A broken man's transformation. My plan required a level of artistry and deception that only decades in Hollywood special effects could provide. I immediately called my old contacts at Hollywood FX Studios. "I need a favor, Marcus," I told my former partner, my voice tinged with a new determination. "Something big, something that will shock everyone." 2 weeks later, the transformation was complete, meticulously executed by the best in the business. The wheelchair wasn't just any prop. It was a state-of-the-art medical-grade model, a $12,000 piece of equipment, custom-fitted with hidden recordings like devices built subtly into the armrest. The oxygen tank was a flawless theatrical prop, a perfect replica down to the smallest detail, ensuring absolute authenticity. The latex prosthetics applied to my hands were a marvel of craftsmanship, making them tremble convincingly with an uncontrollable tremor. The glycerin drool, painstakingly crafted and applied, looked heartbreakingly, sickeningly real. I practiced for hours, honing every nuance of the performance. The slurred speech, the confused, vacant expressions, the labored breathing, the entire agonizing portrayal of a man utterly broken by a severe stroke. It was a role that demanded every ounce of my expertise, and I intended to deliver a performance that would be unforgettable. When Will first saw me in this new devastating guise, he was utterly devastated. His face, usually bright and full of life, crumbled with shock and concern. "Dad, what happened?" he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "When did this start?" I managed a carefully modulated whisper, my voice weak and fragile. "Last month, came on sudden. Doctor says stroke." His physical therapy training, a deeply ingrained part of his being, immediately kicked in. He wanted to examine me, to run tests, to understand the medical details. I deflected with feigned confusion, made vague excuses about specialists, and provided just enough legitimate-sounding medical terminology to appear credible without offering anything verifiable. It was a delicate balance, maintaining the illusion without fully lying about my condition, only the diagnosis. Anne's reaction, predictably, was everything I had expected, and yet somehow even worse than I had anticipated. The first time she saw me confined to the wheelchair, frail and seemingly helpless, she actually recoiled a visceral movement of disgust. "Oh my God, she whispered to Will, her voice laced with a raw horror. "How bad is it?" Will, his voice breaking with genuine emotion, explained, "The doctors aren't sure. He might recover some function, but—" Anne cut him off, her concern for me immediately eclipsed by her own self-interest. "But he can't come to the wedding like this," she declared, her eyes fixed on my supposedly broken form. "Look at him. Will, he's my father, and I understand that. But this is our day, our perfect day. I've worked 2 years planning this. I can't have that in all our photos." That. She referred to me as that. Her cold dismissal, her profound lack of empathy, was breathtaking. "Maybe he could stay home," she suggested. "We'll have someone live stream it for him." Will, to his credit, fought for me, arguing passionately that his father belonged at his wedding. But Anne was relentless, unyielding in her determination to banish me. "If he absolutely must come," she finally conceded, her voice tight with resentment, "he stays in the back. No photos, no reception line, and someone needs to watch him constantly." The test was working perfectly, revealing the depths of her callousness with every calculated step she took. Yet even I, the architect of this elaborate deception, had no idea how spectacularly she would truly fail. The unwelcome guest. The morning of the wedding, the final act of her self-destruction began with a phone call directly from Anne. I almost didn't answer, letting it ring 6 times to cultivate the impression of confusion and slowness before finally picking up. "Hello, Denzel." Her voice was cold, businesslike, utterly devoid of any familial warmth. "It's Anne. We need to talk." This wasn't a worried daughter-in-law, like checking on a family member. This was damage control, a clinical assessment of a problem she needed to eliminate. "Oh, Anne. Hello, dear," I slurred, playing my part. "Listen, I've been thinking about today, about the wedding, and I think it's best if you don't come." I allowed a long, deliberate silence to stretch between us, letting her believe I was slowly processing her cruel decree. "But it's Will's wedding," I whispered, feigning vulnerability. "I know. And we'll make sure you see everything. We'll have someone FaceTime you the whole ceremony. It'll be like you're there," she offered, a transparent attempt at appeasement. "I want to see my son get married," I insisted, my voice carefully fragile. "And you will. Just from home, where you're comfortable, where you're safe." Safe. The word dripped with false concern, a thinly veiled excuse for her true intentions. "Denzel, can I be honest with you?" she asked, a clear warning signal. Here it comes, I thought, bracing myself. I think you're not well, and today needs to be perfect. My family is flying in from all over the country. Will's colleagues from the hospital will be there. Important people." "I understand," I replied, maintaining my facade of slowness. "Do you?" she pressed, her patience clearly wearing thin. "Because I need you to really understand. This wedding cost us $200,000. Every detail matters. Every moment will be photographed, filmed, remembered forever." She paused, expecting me to respond, to capitulate. When I didn't, she continued, her voice hardening. "I can't have you disrupting things, making scenes, having episodes." "I won't make scenes," I promised, my voice barely audible. "You can't promise that. You're sick, Denzel. Really sick. What if you have another stroke during the ceremony? What if you fall out of your wheelchair? What if you make those sounds?" Those sounds. She meant the occasional slurred word, the labored breathing I'd been faking, the very manifestations of the illness she pretended to pity. "Anne, please let me come," I pleaded, pushing the boundaries. "I'm trying to protect you here," she said, her voice now dripping with contempt. "Save you from embarrassment. Because honestly, the way you look right now, the way you sound, it's heartbreaking. People will stare. They'll whisper. They'll pity you." The cruelty in her words was breathtaking, a cold, calculated blow. Even knowing it was an act, even knowing I was manipulating the situation, her words cut deep with their sheer lack of humanity. "But what will hurt most," she continued, her voice a chilling whisper, "is that they'll pity Will. They'll look at him and think, 'Poor guy, stuck taking care of that broken old man.' Is that what you want for your son on his wedding day?" I made my voice smaller, more fragile, almost childlike. "No, I don't want that." "Good, then we're agreed. You'll stay home. I'll have Will call you after the reception." "Wait," I interjected quickly, a final test. What if I promised to stay quiet? In the back?" She sighed heavily, dramatically, her facade of concern finally cracking. "Denzel, I don't think you understand how you look right now. Have you seen yourself lately? Really seen yourself? You look like death. Your clothes hang off you. That drool situation is disgusting. Your hands shake constantly. You can barely form complete sentences." Each word was a calculated blow, delivered with clinical precision. "My guests will be horrified. They'll spend the whole ceremony distracted, watching you instead of us. Some of them have never seen anyone in your condition." Condition. Like I was contagious, a disease that could spread. "And honestly, it's not fair to Will either. He's been stressed about you for weeks, worried sick. Today should be about joy, not this." I could hear her moving around, probably pacing her hotel room, agitated. Plus, there's the practical issues. The venue has stairs. The bathrooms aren't fully accessible. What if you need assistance? What if there's an accident? An accident? She was painting grotesque scenarios of me soiling myself at her wedding. "I've talked to Will about this. He agrees it's for the best." That was a blatant lie. I knew my son. He would never agree to exclude his father. "He said that?" I asked, feigning disbelief. "Of course he did. He's thinking clearly, which is more than I can say for you right now. You're not thinking about what's best for anyone. You're being selfish." Selfish, for wanting to see my only child get married. "Look, I'll be direct since you're not getting the hint. You're an embarrassment waiting to happen. A disaster in a wheelchair, and I will not let you ruin the most important day of my life." There it was, her true voice, stripped bare of all pretense. No more fake concern, no medical excuses. "Do you understand me, Denzel? You are not welcome at my wedding." I stayed quiet for a long moment, letting her savor her perceived victory, letting her think she'd won. "I understand," I whispered finally. "Good. I knew you'd see reason eventually. But Anne, what? I'm coming anyway." The silence stretched between us, taut and brittle like a wire about to snap. "Excuse me?" she demanded, her voice rising. "Will is my son. I'm going to watch him get married." "Like hell you are." Her mask completely dropped, shattering into a million pieces. The sweet, concerned daughter-in-law vanished, replaced by something venomous, truly ugly. "If you show up at my wedding looking like that, I will have security remove you. I will make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of selfish, attention-seeking old man you really are." "Okay," I said, my voice calm, resolute. "Okay, that's all you have to say? I'll see you at the wedding, Anne." And I hung up. 10 minutes later, my phone exploded with texts. Threats, ultimatums, promises that she would destroy my relationship with Will forever if I dared to show up. I turned off my phone, silencing the hateful barrage, and finished getting ready, meticulously applying the custom wheelchair, the theatrical oxygen tank, the perfect prosthetic makeup that had taken 4 grueling hours to achieve. I looked in the mirror one last time. The broken old man stared back at me, glycerin drool glistening at the corner of his mouth. But behind those clouded, seemingly vacant eyes was $53 million in fury and a plan that was about to change everything. I arrived at the Los Angeles Medical Center wedding venue at precisely 1:45 p.m., the irony of the location not lost on me. Anne, a healthcare administrator, had chosen a medical center for her wedding, its grand ballroom overlooking a children's hospital where sick kids fought for their lives. She was celebrating her perfect day in a place dedicated to healing, while simultaneously referring to disabled people as disgusting and vegetables. It was a stark, sickening contrast. The venue coordinator, a bright-eyed young woman named Sarah, rushed over when she saw me in my wheelchair, her face etched with genuine concern. "Sir, are you okay? Do you need assistance?" I let my head loll slightly, slurring my words just enough to sound authentic. "Here for wedding? Will Smith and Anne? Oh, you must be the groom's father. Miss Hathaway specifically mentioned you might need help." I bet she did, I thought, a bitter smile playing on my lips. Sarah, ever solicitous, guided me to the very back row. Not just the back, but behind a large pillar where I would be completely hidden from the main ceremony. A folding chair had been removed, making a discreet space for my wheelchair. "Miss Hathaway thought you'd be more comfortable here," Sarah explained, echoing Anne's patronizing words. "Quieter, less overwhelming." "More comfortable, right," I mused, the bitterness growing. As guests began to arrive, I watched them carefully, a silent, unobserved observer. Anne's family filled the front rows, a sea of designer clothes, expensive jewelry, and practiced almost artificial smiles. Her father, Brad, sported a Rolex that likely cost more than most people's cars, a blatant display of wealth. Her mother, Mariel, clutched a Hermes bag like a shield, her expression one of veiled judgment. Will's side, however, presented a striking contrast. His hospital colleagues, our old neighbors, family friends who still remembered my late wife, they were real people with real jobs, their faces radiating genuine warmth and unaffected joy. The difference was stark, a vivid illustration of the two worlds colliding in this ballroom. At 2:15, Will appeared at the altar. My son looked incredibly handsome in his black tuxedo, but I could discern the subtle tension in his shoulders, a slight stiffness that betrayed his anxiety. He kept scanning the crowd, his eyes searching, probably looking for me. When our eyes finally met across the ballroom, his face crumpled with a mixture of relief and concern. He started to walk toward me, but the wedding coordinator, oblivious to the silent drama unfolding, intercepted him. "Places, everyone, we're about to begin," Will mouthed. "I love you, Dad," from the altar. I nodded slowly, my hand trembling as I wiped a fresh stream of fake drool from my chin, a performance of profound vulnerability. That's when Anne made her entrance. $15,000 of Vera Wang silk, a diamond tiara that caught the light like scattered stars, made her absolutely stunning and absolutely cold. As she walked down the aisle, her eyes, despite the perfect smile plastered on her face, found me in my hiding spot behind the pillar. For just a fleeting moment, her perfect composure faltered. Her jaw tightened, a barely perceptible flicker of fury crossing her features. She was furious that I had dared to show up. Vows and judgments. The ceremony unfolded with an ethereal beauty, a cascade of traditional vows and the exchange of rings. Will's voice, usually steady and strong, cracked perceptibly when he promised to love Anne in sickness and in health. The irony of that particular phrase struck me with a poignant, almost painful force. Anne had already shown, in no uncertain terms, precisely what she thought about sickness, about vulnerability, about anything that deviated from her pristine vision of perfection. During the tender moment of their first kiss as husband and wife, a decisive clarity washed over me, solidifying a path I had been contemplating. I had been on the fence about how far to take this elaborate deception, part of me clinging to a sliver of hope that perhaps at her own wedding, in a moment of profound joy, she might reveal some glimmer of humanity, some small, redemptive sign that she could love my son, enough to accept his supposedly disabled father. But watching her deliberately avoid even glancing in my direction for the entire ceremony, her eyes carefully averting the back corner where I sat hidden like a shameful secret, told me everything I needed to know. She was ashamed of me, disgusted by me. Even on what should have been the happiest day of her life, my presence, though tucked away and out of sight, still bothered her, a persistent irritant in her meticulously planned fairy tale. My resolve hardened. I carefully pulled out my iPhone, keeping it low, out of sight. I opened my banking app, Wells Fargo Private Banking. The account balance, a gleaming testament to a lifetime of innovation and shrewd investment, read $53,247,891.43. Then, with a flick of my thumb, I opened my contacts, finding the number I had memorized weeks ago. National Disability Rights Network, a prominent charity whose mission statement I found profoundly moving, ensuring dignity, opportunity, and equal treatment for all people with disabilities. I drafted a wire transfer, a substantial sum of $500,000, ready to send with a single touch. But first, I wanted to see if Anne could possibly descend to even greater depths of cruelty. I didn't have to wait long, the calculated unraveling. During the post-ceremony photo session, a flurry of flashes and posed smiles, the photographer, a bustling young man, approached my discreet corner. "Should we get some shots with the father of the groom?" he inquired politely, ever eager to capture every familial moment. Anne's voice, however, cut across the ballroom like a finely honed blade, sharp and undeniable. "No family photos with him," she declared, her tone dismissive, contemptuous. "He's not photogenic right now." Not photogenic, that was her chosen description for her new father-in-law, a term reserved for aesthetically unpleasing objects, not human beings. Will, startled by her callousness, began to object, but Anne grabbed his arm possessively, her gaze fixed on him with a steely resolve. "Honey, look at him. Really? Look. Do you want those pictures in our album forever?" I watched my son's face, a contorted mask of conflicting emotions, torn between his loyalty to his new wife and his enduring love for his father. "Maybe just one or two," he suggested weakly, a desperate plea for compromise. "Will, no. I'm sorry, but no," Anne countered, her voice unwavering. "This is our day, our memories. I won't have them ruined. Ruined. My presence, my supposed disability, would ruin their memories." That settled it. Any remaining doubt, any lingering hope for her redemption, evaporated completely. I opened the transfer app again, my fingers steady, and added another zero to the donation amount. $5 million. $5 million to disability rights organizations. Then, with a click, I began recording everything on my phone. Every cruel word, every dismissive gesture, every moment of her unconcealed disgust. The test was complete. Anne Hathaway had failed spectacularly, utterly and irredeemably. Now came the results, a devastating tsunami of consequences. The cocktail hour, a period of mingling and effervescent champagne, was my window of opportunity. While guests chatted and sipped, blissfully unaware, I skillfully navigated my wheelchair to the venue's business center. Sarah, the venue coordinator, helped me, still believing I was a helpless invalid. "Just need to check email," I slurred to her, affecting a confused gaze. "Son's medical insurance forms." She nodded sympathetically and left me alone, retreating to her duties. I had exactly 47 minutes before dinner service, a meticulously planned interval. First, I uploaded everything to the cloud. 4 hours of hidden camera footage from my wheelchair, capturing every interaction, every whispered insult. Anne's phone call this morning, a masterpiece of condescending cruelty, had also been recorded, perfectly legal in California's one-party consent state. I included screenshots of my Wells Fargo banking app, boldly displaying the $53 million inheritance. Then, I pulled up the disability rights organizations I had been researching for months. It wasn't just the National Disability Rights Network. There was the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation, United Spinal Association, Paralyzed Veterans of America, the Brain Injury Association. I had done my homework, selecting organizations that were not just charities, but warriors. Legal advocates who fought discrimination cases, powerful voices that launched public awareness campaigns, which often went viral. They had platforms, they had reach, they had power. I drafted emails to all of them, attaching the recordings, explaining the horrific situation, and promising major, transformative donations if they would help me expose what had transpired here today. My phone buzzed with responses within minutes, a deluge of outrage and offers of support. "Mr. Washington, we're appalled by what we've heard. How can we help?" one email read. "This level of ableism needs public exposure. Are you willing to go on record? We have 2.3 million social media followers. This story needs to be told," another urged. I smiled, a real smile this time, not the confused grimace I had been performing. A genuine, dangerous smile. Next, I called Marcus at Hollywood FX Studios. "How's the performance going, old man?" he asked, his voice laced with amusement. "Better than expected," I replied, a dark satisfaction in my tone. "I need you to document the prosthetics breakdown for tonight. You want the reveal filmed?" he asked, a hint of surprise in his voice. "Everything. Medical-grade documentation of every fake element. I want experts explaining how this was done. Make it educational." A long pause on Marcus's end. "Jesus, Denzel, you're really going nuclear." "She called me a vegetable, Marcus," I reminded him, my voice devoid of emotion, "in front of 200 people. Said I was disgusting." "Say no more," he said, his voice now serious. "We'll have cameras there in 20 minutes. I hung up and opened my laptop bag. Inside were carefully printed copies of everything. Bank statements, the prosthetics invoices detailing the $200,000 in itemized expenses, medical consultations with real stroke specialists who had helped me accurately fake symptoms, legal documents showing my inheritance, patents from my special effects innovations, 47 pieces of undeniable evidence, one for each minute until the showdown. But the most important document was a simple one-page letter. I had written it 3 weeks ago, sealed it in an envelope, and given it to my lawyer with specific dire instructions. If anything happened to me, if I died, if I disappeared, if I was mysteriously committed to a facility, this letter would be opened and its contents released to every major news outlet in America. It was my insurance policy, a safeguard. Because once I stood up from this wheelchair tonight, there was no going back. Anne would be utterly destroyed. Her reputation, her career, her carefully constructed social standing, all of it would crumble into dust. But a desperate, ruined person could also be dangerous. Rich people with ruined lives sometimes did unpredictable things. My phone buzzed with a text from Will. "Dad, where are you?" "They're about to serve dinner." I typed back slowly, maintaining the facade. "Bathroom? Be right there." It was time to return to the performance, to the final stage of the deception. Cracks in the performance. I wheeled back into the grand ballroom, which had been subtly transformed. The lighting was now dimmed for dinner service, and candles flickered softly on every table, casting a romantic glow. Anne sat regally at the head table in her ivory gown, laughing at something her father had said. She looked radiant, happy, completely unaware that her perfect world was about to implode with spectacular violence. I carefully positioned myself at my assigned table, table 12, the furthest from the head table, squeezed between Will's elderly aunt and a hospital orderly who barely spoke English. The forgotten table, the unwanted guests, it was perfect. From here, I had a clear, unobstructed view of everything. The microphone system for toasts, the photographers capturing every moment, the exit doors in case security tried to remove me, and most importantly, I could see Anne's face clearly. I wanted to watch her expression, to witness the precise moment the truth hit her like a physical blow. Dinner was served at exactly 7 p.m. By 7:15, Anne would make her biggest mistake yet. And by 7:30, everyone in this room would know exactly who they were really dealing with. During the salad course, Will appeared at my table, his brow furrowed with concern. "Dad, can I talk to you for a minute?" He knelt beside my wheelchair, his voice low and concerned. His physical therapy training kicking in again, I could see him studying my posture, my hand tremors, the way I held my fork, his professional eye already detecting subtle inconsistencies. "How are you feeling?" he asked gently. "You seem different tonight." Different? My son, bless his observant heart, knew me too well. "Tired," I slurred carefully, maintaining my act. "Long day." "Your muscle tone looks better," he continued, his voice thoughtful. "And your grip strength when you shook hands with Aunt Martha. That was surprisingly firm for someone with your supposed deficits." Will wasn't just my son. He was a licensed physical therapist with 8 years of dedicated experience in stroke rehabilitation. He had worked with hundreds of patients exactly like the character I was playing, and he was starting to see the cracks in my carefully constructed performance. "Dad, I've been thinking," he began, his voice taking on a more serious tone. "Your symptoms don't quite match your supposed diagnosis. The speech patterns are inconsistent. Your fine motor control is too preserved for someone with the brain damage you described." I let my eyes wander slightly, playing confused, affecting a vague disorientation. "Don't understand." "And another thing," he pressed on, his gaze unwavering. "You said you had the stroke last month, but you're not on any visible medications. No blood thinners, no anti-seizure drugs. Your oxygen levels seem fine without the tank." He was good, too good. He was a threat to the illusion. "Maybe we should get you examined by one of my colleagues tomorrow. Dr. Rodriguez specializes in—" "Will." Anne's voice cut across the ballroom, sharp and impatient. "What are you doing over there?" She approached our table, her wedding dress rustling with each hurried step. Her smile was bright and artificial for the cameras, but her eyes, when they met mine, were ice cold. "Just checking on Dad," Will said, standing up, trying to diffuse the tension. "Well, stop fussing over him. It's our wedding day, not a medical conference." She grabbed Will's arm possessively, pulling him closer to her. "People are starting to notice." It was then that I saw him. At the bar, nursing a scotch and watching everything unfold with sharp, discerning eyes, stood a man I recognized from Anne's engagement photos, her uncle Richard, Dr. Wise. Richard Hathaway, a renowned neurologist at Cedars-Sinai. Anne had mentioned him before, boasting, "Uncle Rich is the smartest man in our family. He can spot a faker from across the room." Dr. Hathaway was studying me intently, not with pity or disgust like the other guests, but with a keen professional curiosity. He had clearly been watching Will's examination, probably drawing his own unsettling conclusions. Our eyes met across the room. He raised his glass slightly, not in a toast, but in a subtle, knowing acknowledgement. He knew, maybe not everything, but enough to strongly suspect that something was profoundly wrong with the drooling man in the wheelchair. "Will, seriously," Anne continued, her voice growing sharper, losing its veneer of politeness. "You're embarrassing us, everyone's staring. I'm just concerned about... About what? He's fine, he's here, isn't he? Against my better judgment, I might add." That snide comment made Will stiffen, his jaw clenching. "And he's my father," he countered, his voice rising. "And he's ruining our reception with this whole display. Look around. People can barely eat with him making those sounds." I wasn't making any sounds at all, but truth had never been Anne's strong suit. Dr. Hathaway, intrigued, moved closer, positioning himself within earshot. "Maybe," Will said carefully, "you could show a little more compassion." "Compassion?" Anne's mask slipped further, revealing the ugliness beneath. "I've shown plenty of compassion. I let him come, didn't I? Even though he looks like death and sounds like a broken record player." "Anne," Will pleaded. "No, Will, I'm done pretending this is normal. Your father is disturbing our guests." Dr. Hathaway was now close enough to hear every damning word, his expression darkening with each cruel pronouncement from his niece. The timing was perfect, because what Anne said next would seal her fate forever, irrevocably damning her in front of an entire ballroom of witnesses. The public accusation. Anne's voice, now amplified by the microphone she clutched, carried across the ballroom as dinner plates were being cleared, commanding immediate attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention," she announced, standing at the head table, champagne glass raised. The photographer, sensing a moment, positioned himself for the perfect shot. "Will and I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. Your love and support mean the world to us." Polite applause rippled through the crowd, a gentle hum of agreement. I watched from my corner table, oxygen tank hissing softly beside me, an impassive, seemingly broken observer. "Before we begin the official toasts," she continued, her tone shifting, a calculated gravity entering her voice, "I need to address something that's been challenging for us." My blood ran cold. She was going off script, venturing into dangerous, uncharted territory. "Many of you have noticed Will's father, Denzel, in his wheelchair tonight." 200 pairs of eyes, startled and curious, turned toward me. I slumped lower in my chair, playing the part of the embarrassed invalid, my head bowed in shame. "What you might not know is that he's been struggling since his stroke last month. We debated whether he should come tonight. His condition is unpredictable, but Will insisted his father be here, and I support my husband completely." The lie, a masterpiece of manipulative fiction, rolled off her tongue like silk, crafted to make her appear compassionate while subtly discrediting me. However, I think it's important for everyone to understand that Denzel isn't quite himself anymore. The stroke affected his cognitive abilities. Sometimes he gets confused, sometimes he makes noises he can't control. Dr. Hathaway, her uncle, and a distinguished neurologist, moved closer to my table, his medical training clearly triggered by his niece's public, unqualified diagnosis. "So if you see him struggling, please don't be alarmed. He's receiving excellent care, and we're exploring residential options that might be better suited to his needs." Residential options. She was publicly discussing putting me in a nursing home, stripping me of my autonomy and dignity in front of my son's wedding guests. I just wanted everyone to know so there wouldn't be any uncomfortable moments during our celebration. She raised her glass again, her smile triumphant, self-satisfied. "To family in all its forms." The toast was hollow, patronizing, a masterclass in public humiliation disguised as profound compassion. But what happened next was perfect, an exquisite twist of fate. As Anne sat down, beaming with self-congratulation, a woman at table 6 stood up. I recognized her immediately, Dr. Patricia Williams, one of Will's most respected colleagues from the rehabilitation hospital. "Excuse me," Dr. Williams called out, her voice carrying authority and a distinct lack of patience. "I'm a neurologist, and I couldn't help but notice some inconsistencies in what you've described." The ballroom went dead quiet. Anne's triumphant smile freezing on her lips. "I've been observing Mr. Washington throughout the evening, and his presentation doesn't match typical post-stroke symptoms. His eye tracking is too coordinated, his posture control is remarkably preserved, and his oxygen saturation appears normal without supplementation." Dr. Hathaway, Anne's own uncle, stepped forward now, joining his colleague, his face a mask of professional concern and familial embarrassment. "I agree with Dr. Williams. I'm also a neurologist, and frankly, Anne, your description of your father-in-law's condition doesn't align with what I'm observing clinically." Anne's face flushed a furious red. "I don't think this is appropriate." "What's not appropriate," Dr. Williams interrupted, her voice gaining strength, "is making public medical statements about someone without proper evaluation." Will stood up, confused and distressed, caught in the escalating professional dispute. "What are you saying?" he asked, his voice strained. "I'm saying," Dr. Hathaway said carefully, choosing his words with grave deliberation, "that either your father's recovery has been miraculous or there's something else going on here." The room was electric with tension. Guests whispered among themselves, their shocked murmurs filling the space. Phones came out, poised to record. People were already documenting the unfolding drama. Anne panicked, her composure completely shattered. "This is ridiculous. Look at him. He's obviously disabled. He can barely speak. He's drooling all over himself." She pointed directly at me, her finger trembling with rage. "I mean, just look." At the man. "He's a vegetable. A drooling, pathetic old vegetable who can't even feed himself." The words, sharp and guttural, echoed through the ballroom sound system, amplified for everyone to hear. Vegetable. She'd said it again, but this time she'd said it in front of 2 neurologists, a physical therapist, and 200 witnesses. This time it was being recorded on dozens of phones. This time there was no taking it back. Dr. Hathaway's face went white with horror, his familial loyalty warring with his professional ethics. "Anne Marie Hathaway," he said, using her full name, his voice stern like a deeply disappointed parent. "How dare you speak about any human being that way?" "Uncle Rich, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," he interrupted, his voice cutting through her desperate plea. "And so does everyone else in this room." He turned to address the stunned crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you've just witnessed is unconscionable. No person, disabled or otherwise, deserves to be spoken about like this." The ballroom erupted in murmurs of agreement, a wave of outrage washing over the guests. Many were visibly uncomfortable, some already heading for the exits, unable to stomach the raw cruelty. Anne looked around desperately, her eyes wide with dawning horror, realizing she had crossed a line she couldn't uncross. That's when I decided it was time. Time to stand up. The truth stands tall. I reached down, my hands steady and deliberate, and turned off the oxygen tank. The soft, incessant hissing stopped, plunging the ballroom into a dead, unnatural silence. Slowly, with a measured grace that belied my supposed infirmity, I removed the nasal cannula, setting it aside like discarded theater props. Then, with a firm grip on the armrest of my wheelchair, I pushed myself up. 200 people gasped simultaneously, a collective intake of breath that vibrated through the room. Anne's champagne glass, which she still clutched, slipped from her trembling fingers and shattered on the marble floor, a sharp, echoing crash that punctuated the stunning silence. "Good evening, everyone," I said, my voice clear and strong, resonating with an authority that left no room for doubt. "I'm Denzel Washington, and I have something to tell you about your beautiful bride." I walked, not shuffled, not stumbled, but walked with steady, confident steps to the microphone at the head table. The trembling hands were gone, my posture upright and powerful. The slurred speech had vanished, replaced by articulate clarity. Anne backed away from me, her face a mask of absolute horror, as if I were a ghost risen from the grave. "That's impossible," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You can't." "You were the stroke." "There was no stroke, Anne," I stated calmly, my voice amplified by the microphone. "There never was." I adjusted the microphone, looking out at the stunned, incredulous faces of the guests. "For the past 6 months, I've been conducting an experiment, a test of character, designed to reveal the true nature of the woman who sought to marry my son." Dr. Hathaway, his earlier suspicions now confirmed, nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. a flicker of professional respect replacing his earlier shock. The wheelchair cost $12,000. The oxygen equipment was rented from a medical supply company. The prosthetics, the trembling hands, the drool effects, they cost me exactly $200,000 from Hollywood FX Studios. I pulled out my phone, held it up, displaying the recording app. I recorded everything. Every cruel comment, every dismissive gesture, every moment you treated a supposedly disabled man like garbage. Anne's face cycled through a horrifying gamut of emotions: confusion, horror, incandescent rage, and finally, sheer, unadulterated panic. "You're lying," she said desperately, her voice cracking. "This is some kind of trick. You were sick. I saw you." "You saw what you wanted to see, Anne," I countered, my voice unwavering. "A burden, an embarrassment, someone you could push aside and forget about." I touched my phone screen, and Anne's own voice, loud and clear, filled the ballroom through the sound system, her words echoing her cruelty. "He looks like death. Your clothes hang off you. That drool situation is disgusting. You look like you belong in a nursing home, not at our wedding." Her own words, crystal clear, amplified for everyone to hear, were her undoing. Guests began standing up, some heading for the exits in disgust, unable to witness the public spectacle any longer. Others stayed, transfixed by the unfolding disaster, riveted by the raw drama. "You called me a vegetable," I continued, my voice steady, though laced with a controlled fury. "Multiple times. You said I was disgusting. You tried to ban me from my own son's wedding." Will stood frozen at the head table, his face a mask of profound shock and deep betrayal, his world crumbling around him. A fortune. Redefined. But here's what you didn't know, Anne. Here's the part that makes this really interesting. I pulled out a folded document from my jacket pocket, a simple piece of paper that held the power to shatter her entire world. "I'm worth $53 million. The number hit the room like a bomb, a gasp rippling through the stunned audience. $53,247,891.43 to be exact. I elaborated, emphasizing the precise figure. Inheritance from selling my special effects company to Disney. Patents on breakthrough prosthetics technology, investments, real estate, royalties. I held up my phone, displaying the Wells Fargo banking app, the numbers glaringly visible on the large screen. All of it was going to Will and his future family. A trust fund I'd been planning to announce tonight as my wedding gift. Anne's legs nearly gave out beneath her. She grabbed the table for support, her face ashen, her eyes wide with a horrifying realization. "Was going to Will," I repeated, letting the past tense resonate in the silence. "Because 30 minutes ago, I made some different arrangements." I opened my laptop on the head table, connecting it to the venue's projection system. My banking interface, now displaying the wire transfer section, appeared on screens throughout the ballroom, a shocking public display of my financial power. With everyone watching, I navigated to the wire transfer section. $5 million to the National Disability Rights Network, $2 million to the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation, $1 million each to United Spinal Association, Paralyzed Veterans of America, and the Brain Injury Association. With a resolute click, I hit execute on each transfer, the funds instantly disappearing from my account. "That's $10 million, I announced, my voice unwavering. "Gone to organizations that fight for the dignity of people you called vegetables." The room erupted in gasps and whispers, a cacophony of astonishment and disbelief. "The remaining $43 million, I continued, my gaze sweeping across the stunned faces, will stay in a trust fund but with new conditions. Will get access only if he divorces you within 90 days. If he stays married to someone who treats disabled people like garbage, the money goes to charity too." Will, finally finding his voice amidst the chaos, spoke, his voice hoarse with shock. "Dad, I don't understand. Why would you do this? Test Anne like this?" I looked at my son with genuine love and a profound sadness, because I needed to know who she really was, son. When she thought I was poor, she treated me like trash. When she thought I was disabled, she treated me like I wasn't even human. I turned back to Anne, who was now openly weeping, mascara streaming down her cheeks. You work in healthcare administration, Anne. You're supposed to advocate for patients. Instead, you called one a vegetable at your own wedding. I didn't mean it, she sobbed, her voice a desperate plea. I was stressed. The wedding, the pressure. You meant every word, I corrected her, my voice firm. And now 200 people heard exactly what you think of disabled individuals. Dr. Hathaway stepped forward, his face etched with shame and anger. And I'm ashamed to call you family. What I witnessed tonight goes against everything we stand for as medical professionals. Uncle Rich, please, Anne whimpered. No, you've shown your true character, and it's ugly. I pulled up one more screen on my laptop, a final, crushing blow. There's something else you should know, Anne. Remember when you chose this venue, the Los Angeles Medical Center? You thought it was just pretty, didn't you? I gestured toward the expansive windows overlooking the children's hospital. This venue donates its profits to pediatric care. Sick children, disabled children, children you would probably call vegetables, too. The brutal irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Their faces reflecting a spectrum of shock and disgust. And the final twist, I concluded, a chilling finality in my tone. I've been recording this entire evening. The footage goes live on social media in exactly 10 minutes, along with a complete breakdown of the prosthetics deception. The disability rights organizations I just donated to have already agreed to share it with their millions of followers. Anne's phone, which she had picked up, began buzzing frantically. Her friends, her colleagues, her social media followers, they were already seeing the clips people had posted during dinner, the first tremors of her social earthquake. Your career in healthcare is over, Anne, I stated, a plain, undeniable truth. No hospital will hire someone who calls patients vegetables. No medical facility will trust you with vulnerable populations. She collapsed into a chair, the fight completely drained out of her body shaking with convulsive sobs. $43 million, I said to Will, my voice softer, filled with a father's hope. 90 days to decide what matters more, money or staying married to someone who failed the most basic test of human decency. I looked around the ballroom one final time, the devastation complete. The bar remains open. Enjoy your evening, everyone. I walked toward the exit, my steps strong and sure, leaving behind the shattered remnants of a perfect wedding. Behind me, Anne Hathaway sobbed into her $15,000 dress, a ruined bride, while 200 wedding guests filed out in stunned silence, the air thick with the aftershocks of a profound public reckoning. The test was complete, and she had failed spectacularly. The echoes of exposure. The ballroom emptied in a mere 15 minutes, not gradually or politely, but with the urgent efficiency of a fire evacuation. I stood in the lobby, still in my elaborate medical costume, but now walking normally, observing the exodus of shocked guests. Dr. Hathaway approached me first, his face a mixture of bewilderment and grudging respect. Mr. Washington, what you did tonight, I've never seen anything like it. Good or bad, doctor? I asked, my voice calm. Necessary, he said firmly, a weight in his words. Anne's always had cruel tendencies, but this, he shook his head, a gesture of profound disappointment. I work with stroke patients daily. What she said about you, what she truly believes about disabled people, it's everything wrong with our healthcare system. Dr. Williams joined us, her phone in hand, her eyes wide with the unfolding impact. The video is already going viral. Vegetable Groom is trending on Twitter. 3 million views in the last hour. My phone buzzed incessantly with notifications. News outlets, talk shows, documentary filmmakers. The story was spreading faster than wildfire, consuming the internet. Mr. Washington, a young reporter from Channel 7, emboldened by the chaos, approached me. Could we get a statement? Before I could answer, Anne burst through the ballroom doors, her wedding dress stained, her makeup destroyed, her elaborate updo falling in disarray around her face. You destroyed me, she screamed across the lobby, her voice raw with anguish. You ruined my life. Hotel security stepped forward, ready to intervene, but I waved them off. You destroyed yourself, Anne, I stated calmly, devoid of triumph. I just gave you the rope. $53 million, she shrieked, her voice echoing off the marble walls. You had $53 million and you let me think you were poor. I wanted to see who you really were, Anne. Who you really were, without the pretense. Who I really was, she repeated, her voice laced with outrage. I was trying to protect my wedding, my reputation, my family, by calling disabled people vegetables. That was private between us. Nothing's private when you're cruel to vulnerable people, Anne, I said, my voice resonating with a deeper meaning. The disability community has been fighting this attitude for decades. Tonight, you gave them the perfect, irrefutable example of why their work matters. She pulled out her phone desperately, scrolling through a torrent of messages. It's not stopping. The comments, the shares, they found my LinkedIn, my work email. Someone posted my hospital's phone number. I felt no satisfaction watching her panic, just a sad recognition of consequences meeting actions. Los Angeles Memorial already called, she continued, tears streaming down her face. I'm suspended pending investigation. The medical board is reviewing my license. Dr. Hathaway stepped closer to his niece, his face grim. And you called a patient a vegetable at your own wedding, on camera. What did you expect would happen? He's not a real patient. It was fake, she cried, clutching at straws. But your attitude toward disability was real, Dr. Williams said coldly, her gaze unyielding. And now every disabled person in America knows exactly what you think of them. Will finally emerged from the ballroom, looking utterly shell-shocked. He had removed his bow tie and jacket, his eyes red and swollen. Dad, can we talk? He asked, his voice strained. I nodded, and we walked to a quiet corner of the lobby, away from the swirling vortex of reporters and shattered dreams. I don't understand any of this, he began, his voice barely a whisper. The money, the test, the deception. Your wife failed the basic humanity test, son, I explained, my voice gentle but firm. But why this way? Why humiliate her publicly? I looked at my boy, 31 years old, with a good heart, but still naive about the world's darker corners. Because private cruelty toward disabled people happens every single day, Will. In hospitals, in nursing homes, in families. It stays hidden because victims often can't speak up for themselves. They are silenced by their vulnerability. So you decided to speak for them, he murmured, understanding dawning in his eyes. I decided to show what that cruelty looks like when it's exposed to the light of day. Will was quiet for a long moment, processing the enormity of my actions. The money? The inheritance? You'd really give it all away? Son, I've got more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes, I said, a faint smile touching my lips. But dignity, respect for vulnerable people, that's priceless. And if I stay married to Anne, then you stay married to someone who thinks disabled people are vegetables. And $43 million goes to organizations that fight that attitude. He looked back toward Anne, who was still arguing with reporters and security, her life unraveling before her eyes. 90 days, he whispered, the weight of the ultimatum settling upon him. My phone rang. It was Marcus from Hollywood FX Studios. Denzel, the breakdown video is ready. Medical experts explaining every prosthetic, every effect. Educational content about disability representation in media. Perfect timing, I replied, and the disability rights organizations want to interview you. This is becoming a movement. I looked around the lobby at the reporters, the cameras, the social media posts spreading my story across the internet. Tonight had been about testing one person. Tomorrow would be about changing how society treats millions. Dignity's dawn. 3 months had passed since the night that shook the wedding industry and sent shockwaves through the disability community. I sat in my real office, not the modest studio apartment I'd pretended to inhabit, reading the morning news. The quiet hum of my multi-million-dollar estate was a stark contrast to the life I'd staged. Will had filed for divorce on day 87, 3 days before the deadline. The settlement was clean, a swift separation. Anne received nothing beyond her legal fees and a permanent reminder that the internet never forgets. The hashtag #VegetableGroom still trended weekly, usually attached to news stories about disability rights victories or inspiring tales of advocacy. She'd lost her job, her medical license revoked after a thorough investigation, and most of her former friends had vanished, unwilling to be associated with such public disgrace. Last I heard, she was working retail in Phoenix under her maiden name, a muted, unglamorous existence. I felt no joy in her downfall, only the quiet, profound satisfaction that consequences finally had been fairly distributed. The $43 million remained in Will's trust fund, exactly as planned. He'd earned it, not through inheritance alone, but by choosing human decency and integrity over social status and material gain. It wasn't a difficult choice, really, in the grand scheme of things, but one that, apparently, proved harder than most people think. My phone buzzed, a familiar text from Will. "Dad, can you meet me for lunch? I have news." We met at our old favorite diner in Van Nuys, a place where the prices were reasonable and the coffee flowed freely. He looked lighter somehow, genuinely happier, as if a great weight had been lifted from his neck.